Leadership is all about aspiration. You got to be better every single day. These two seniors came up to me after my presentation with huge smiles on their faces. One wants to be a doctor, one wants to be a lawyer. I said, well, that's great. Are you going to go to university here in India, or maybe you'll go to UK or the United States? And they said, oh, no. We can't leave India. We're girls. I'm like, get back in that auditorium. One of the silliest things I've ever told a group of students was one day I looked at my little ones and said, all right, kids, write about your lives. They looked up at me like I was from outer space and said, we're only 6. Nothing's happened to us. And I looked at them, I'm like, no, man, things happen to you every single day. When I was your age, when I was in first grade, I had this miserable, mean, evil teacher. And one day, she smacked me on the hand, got me to cry in front of the entire class. And so the next day, I was walking to school, and I had an apple. I peed on the apple, and as I got to school, I gave her the apple, and she ate it and said it was the best apple she'd ever eaten. My students looked up at me and said, that is awesome. This is also the reason I've never accepted food from a child. See, on that day I learned that if I ever wanted my students to share stories with me, I had to share stories with them, and I learned then and there the power of storytelling. I'm Dr. Danny Brassell, and I am on a mission to bring joy back into education and the workplace by transforming struggling and reluctant readers into more passionate and proficient readers. Why? Because we know that readers are leaders, whether they're in the classroom or the weight room or the boardroom. And so today I'd like to share with you 3 lessons I've learned about leadership throughout my lifetime. Beginning with the first lesson, leadership begins with motivation. Motivation is your desire, your willingness to do something. Miss McLean was my 11th grade English teacher, and Miss McLean, in her 25 years of teaching, had never had a student score higher than a 95% on her final exam. Now, I had a solid B in her class, and one day my buddy and I were calculating our grades, and I discovered in order to move up from a B to an A, I was going to have to score 97% on her final exam. I also calculated that I could get a 0 and maintain my B. So, being the student that always liked to challenge himself, I turned to my buddy and said, oh, I guess I got a B. Well, she overheard that. She leaned in. She's like, this is the moment, Daniel. This is the moment that's going to determine the course of your entire future. She guilted me into studying for this exam for the next 3 weeks. And I scored a 96%. The highest grade ever in her class. And she gave me the B. The woman never let me get away with anything. I would do a paper really quickly, turn it in. She wouldn't even look at it. She'd say, how dare you, Daniel? How dare you put your name on this? She was a huge New York Yankees baseball fan, and she liked to remind me in his final season as a New York Yankee, Joe DiMaggio was playing in a meaningless game. The Yankees already clinched the pennant. They were up a run. DiMaggio hits a single, tries to stretch it into a double, slides headfirst into second base, almost kills himself. A rookie at the end of the inning is like, Joe, what were you thinking? DiMaggio looked at the rookie and said, I was thinking that some kid up in the stands, this might be his first time ever at Yankee Stadium. I want him to know what kind of player I am. Miss McLean looked at me, she said, Daniel, someday you're going to meet your maker. And it ain't going to be a very good day. So you need to make your worst day your best day by never giving anything less than your best effort. It's actually one of the best lessons anybody's ever taught me. It taught me the second lesson of leadership. Leadership requires dedication. I've taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. I became a teacher because of the movie Stand and Deliver. If you haven't seen the movie, go check it out. It's a true story of Jaime Escalante going to Garfield High School in East Los Angeles to teach advanced placement calculus. So I said, I'm going to be Jaime Escalante. So I was originally hired to teach 12th grade social studies in Compton, California. It's a community in South Central Los Angeles in the inner city. And they switched me from working with high school students to middle school students to upper elementary to lower elementary to pretty soon, instead of preparing students for college, I was coming home with snot marks all over my pants from my little ones hugging me all day. The first thing I learned is what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner. But what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. The second thing I learned was perseverance. Raise your hand if you've ever been in a negative environment, surrounded by negative people telling you what you couldn't do all the time. I mean, one of my old principals, Mrs. Lucifer, she used to fly into my classroom every single day on her broomstick with her permascowl and her foreboding clipboard, and she used to write me up for everything she thought that I was doing wrong. She was killing me. But I had a guardian angel. I was blessed. I taught at a school where I was the only man at my school. I was the only white person at my school. I taught with predominantly elderly African American women from the South who all had been teaching for at least 20 years. Well, Mrs. Turner was my mentor. Mrs. Turner had been teaching for 40 years. Mrs. Turner was from Alabama. She believed in two things, discipline and the Bible. When her little ones got out of line, she started reading aloud Revelations to them. It was Mrs. Turner, this saint, this beautiful woman, this guardian angel who took me under her wing, and she taught me a system on how to bring joy into my classroom every single day. She's the one that taught me to believe in every single one of my students. She's the one that taught me that every kid has the same possibility to achieve extraordinary things. I never forgot that. That woman taught me everything I ever needed to know about teaching. The third thing I've learned about leadership is that leadership is all about aspiration. You know, you got to be better every single day. I've been blessed now. I've been able to speak to over 3,000 audiences around the world. I was speaking to a school once, an all-girls school in Chennai, India, in Tamil Nadu. And these two seniors came up to me after my presentation with huge smiles on their faces. One wants to be a doctor, one wants to be a lawyer. I said, well, that's great. Are you going to go to university here in India, or maybe you'll go to UK or the United States? And they said, oh, no. We can't leave India. We're girls. I'm like, get back in that auditorium. I got all the girls back in the auditorium. I said, now is your moment, ladies. Within 5 years, India is going to be the largest country on the planet in terms of population. I mean, you're a fairly young democracy, only about 70 years old, yet you've already elected a woman prime minister. America still hasn't elected a woman president. Right now, there are twice as many women in India as there are people in the United States. There's actually more women in India with a graduate degree than there are people in the United States. I'm like, you just made it my mission in life to get you all believing that one of you is going to be a prime minister, one of you is going to be a Supreme Court justice, one of you is going to be a really good parent. I need to get you believing in yourselves. I always used to tell my students, you know, sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you. That's why they only give me the best and the brightest. See, all of us are going to have those critics and naysayers in life. You know, I remember when I was a junior in high school, I was elected to this thing called Boys Nation, which was a big deal. Basically, every state elects 2 boys for an all-expense-paid trip to Washington, D.C. I was really excited about it, but I was dreading getting my hair cut. See, I had a barber named Leo, and Leo had this ability. Every time after I left getting my hair cut, he made me feel stupid. And so I went to get my hair cut from Leo, and I started telling him about Boys Nation. He's like, oh, wow, when's this Boys Nation? I'm like, oh, it's like in a couple of weeks. He's like, a couple of weeks? July? July in Washington, D.C.? That's the worst time to go. It's hot. It's humid. There's tons of tourists. You're not going to get to see anything. It's a horrible time to go to Washington, D.C. I say, well, they say we get to meet the congressman. He's like, the congressman? You're 17, Danny. You can't even vote. Congressman's not going to have any time for you. You're a kid, for crying out loud. I said, well, they say we get to meet the president. He stops cutting my hair. He's like, did I cut too close? Do you mean the president of the United States? You're a kid, for crying out loud. You're not going to meet the president. And as always, I left Leo the barber feeling a little bit smaller, a little bit more stupid than as I had entered. Well, I go to Boys Nation. It's really one of the most transformative weeks of my life. Changed my life. A couple of weeks later, I go to get my hair cut again, and Leo's cutting. He's like, oh, how'd that Boys Nation thing go? I'm like, it was incredible, Leo. It's changed my life. He's like, did you get to see anything? I'm like, oh, it was incredible. Yeah, it's hot and humid in Washington, D.C., but the head of the National Park Service, he took us to the front of every single line at the Smithsonian. We got to do all these exclusive back tours. We all got to, at the American History Museum, we all got to try on Indiana Jones's jacket. He's like, well, did you get to meet the congressman? I'm like, not only did we get to meet the congressman, I got to meet both senators. As a matter of fact, Senator Worth, he took me down to the Senate floor. I got to meet a whole bunch of other senators. Then he took me back to a studio where we filmed a public service announcement for public television. He's like, did you meet the president? I'm like, no, we didn't get to meet the president. Leo smiles. I'm like, no, the president was going to Camp David. So we were on the White House lawn as the president boarded Marine One. We got to wave to the president. Then after that, we rushed below the White House, went in this tunnel over to the old executive mansion. We got to meet the vice president and talk to him for several minutes. He's like, you met the vice president? I'm like, yeah. He's like, what'd he say to you? He said, hey, kid, where'd you get that horrible haircut? See, folks, there are always going to be naysayers. There are always going to be critics. But show me any significant person in history that ever accomplished anything by being a naysayer, by being a critic. You're better than that. You are a leader. You are the one who has the power to make people scowl or to make people smile every single day. You are the one who can discourage people or who can encourage people. You are the one.
Tell us what you think about this video, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.